And we're live. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I know a few of you have been waiting for this live. Finally, the energy is right for me to release, right? So, we're going to be talking about toxic family or toxic family members. And if you think you don't have toxic family members, you might be the toxic one. So, I'll go ahead and wait for a couple of you to come on before I go jumping straight into it. But yeah, so in this live, we're going to go ahead and discuss not just situations where you're apart from your family, but live-in situations too, because I know some of you through the pandemic have had to go back into toxic situations. And the way this pandemic is working, some of you are really at a point where you're just like, I can't do this anymore. How do I deal? What do I do? How is it possible to live at a distance if I'm in the same home as them? So go ahead and let me know you're here. Give it a thumbs up. Go ahead and share it, whatever you please to do. So, all right, we got one person on. All right, so I will go ahead and just get started then. So I'll go directly first into the etymology of what toxic means. So toxic is essentially just poison. There's no other really terminology. Toxic is poison. I know there's been a lot of memes about being la toxica and the toxic boyfriend and the toxic girlfriend. But let's go ahead and talk about toxic family. Toxic family members. It can be somebody like your brother, your sister, your mom, your dad, an uncle, an aunt, anybody who is by blood technically related to you is your family. Or we also have those extended family members, okay? So what it means, tolerance. What does tolerance mean, right? It's to endure, it's fortitude and to bear, okay? So your tolerance level is how much you can take on. It's how much of a certain amount you're willing to be okay with, okay? It's an ability to take either large doses or small doses. That's what tolerance is, okay? And then we have abuse, which it's a misuse of power. It's to deceive, it's to attack. And it wasn't until the 1950s where abuse came into like the sexual part of it, a sexual misconduct, okay? So for the black sheep out there, a lot of us tend to fall into this category when we don't abide by the rules of society or the rules that your family has set up. Now, I actually looked into the etymology of family, okay? So you guys know that I'm big on words and definitions and language. So if you guys actually look up the etymology of family, it's servants of a household. So how many of us grew up in a household where we felt like we were slaves? I know. I sometimes did. Wash the dishes, do this, do that, right? Awesome. So it makes sense now that I looked up the etymology why I felt that way. And I mean, they were chores. It wasn't nothing like, oh my gosh, I feel like a slave. There's slavery. No, none of that. However, in our Hispanic communities or Latino communities, a lot of the times, even for a glass of water, like, go get me water. And they are perfectly apt to go ahead and do it themselves. However, it's when that, even things like that can be abusive. So I'm not going to even go into that route. But so how do we identify toxic behavior or toxic people or toxic, just behaviors? So a lot of the time, the toxicity, I want you to pay attention to how it shows up, who you're around and how you feel when you show up, when you've been around a certain uncle or an aunt or even a cousin, your own parents, your own siblings can be those toxic people. A lot of times toxicity shows up as criticism. They always criticize you, whether your hair is a certain way, whether you dyed it a certain color, whether you dress a certain way, whether you have a certain type of friend or group of friends, what you do for a living. Like you're always met with some kind of criticism from them. It's normally makes you feel less than, as if you're not enough. You always leave feeling drained or exhausted. And a lot of the times you start to question yourself, you start to question your worth and your value. So this is a lot of times how that toxicity shows up. Let me know if you guys can identify with any of this, because I know I did growing up, and now I've learned how to deal, and I learned to separate myself from those people who I felt didn't respect my boundaries, because it also comes as jealousy and guilt trips. Oh, the guilt trips. Oh man, those guilt trips are pretty massive in a lot of our cultures, right? To manipulate or to control. Oftentimes, the toxic behavior is very manipulative, but not only that, but they can come off as very defensive. Say you're trying to just have a discussion of an idea or something that you think is worthy and valuable to you, and all of a sudden somebody gets defensive because they think you're talking down to them, or you think you're talking against whatever it is that they believe, and they get very defensive. It's also a victim mentality. It's always, oh, woe is me. You know, when I was a kid, I hear that one a lot. When I was growing up, or when I was this, and they automatically go into this victim mentality of, instead of taking responsibility for whatever happened and their part in it, they go into victim mode. They go into, well, this is what happened to me, and you don't know, so you can't talk, and things like that. So those are toxic behaviors. Also, short fuses. When people just get automatically upset, like, these are toxic behaviors, you guys. Like, we got to be very vigilant. Now, I'm not talking about narcissism. I know somebody out there is thinking, oh, it sounds like a narcissist. That's not what I'm talking about. I am talking about, mind you, narcissists are very toxic. Okay, I'm not, but I don't want you guys to confuse things. Now, all of these, it's short fuses, it's very negative. Anytime you're around these people, it doesn't matter if it's your mom or your dad, if it's a brother, a sister, cousin, an uncle, an aunt. You always leave the situation questioning your value, questioning, am I enough? Am I doing things right? You leave questioning who you are. And these are how I want you to pay attention to. These are how toxic behaviors work. And they're never happy for you. You can go and you can graduate. You could be the first one in college. You can do all these things. And oh yeah, well, now you think you're too good for us? Oh, here's one that I heard from one of my uncles. I pay. So I live in a HOA, and clearly when you have an HOA, you pay, right? So it's like, oh yeah, it's because you like to, you live, because I also live across town, okay? I don't live in North Las Vegas anymore, even though that's where I grew up. It was almost like a jab at the way in my lifestyle that I chose to have, okay? He says, oh, you like to live where you have to pay to live. Yeah, I like to pay to live, to have a nice, beautiful community that I live in, where there's not 80,000 cars in front of my yard, where there's not drive-by shootings, yes, I do. But it was a jab at my lifestyle. And I'm just like, what did I do to you? What did I do to you to make you come at me that way? Or their comments on your weight. Oh, are these toxic behaviors? Now, over time, all of this behavior starts to show up in it, and you really start questioning, am I wrong in doing or believing or showing up the way I do in my life? No, you're not. You're not wrong. You live at a certain vibration and they live at another vibration. That's how I want you guys to start looking at things. Now, how do we take all of that toxic behavior and how do we transmute it, or how do we deal with it, especially when you're living with these people? One of the biggest things, especially if you live with people, is you want to learn how to not be reactive to what it is that they're saying. Because anytime that you ever identify with it, you can get offended. So one of the things that I'll just use that example, that I pay to live where I do. Yes, I do. It's an HOA. Now, I could have taken it, and back then I was like, well, I like the way I live. I enjoy where I live. And back then I also lived in Summerlin when this comment was said. So, which is another area full of HOAs, right? But I took it and I was just like, well, yeah, he's actually right. I do pay. So there was no offense taken. But a lot of the times we start to question how we like to live. Or we start to question, is it wrong that I feel this way? Or is it wrong that I'm able to maintain a certain type of lifestyle? Okay, no, it's not. Now, how do you deal with the people, especially in a live-in situation? So, a lot of you who follow me know my family and whatnot, but some of you who don't. So, I am 4 of 5 children, and growing up, we were all pretty close and whatnot, and I still think we're a pretty united family. However, I did. Sorry, bro, I'm going to talk about you. However, I did have a brother where he criticized a lot of the time because he, at some point, was a big Bible thumper, just like I was back in the day, where I got criticized and just it was almost kind of like he made me feel as if what I was doing was wrong. Even though in my heart I knew that I was helping people and I know I help people and that I know that I get people to another level in their lives, but he would make me feel guilty, or he would make me feel as if I was going to hell. Okay, mind you, this was very early on in my career as being a psychic, in my career of doing Reiki, in my career of all of this self-development and the help that I give others. And it was always like this just like putting me down. And it took 12 years. Okay, it took a lot of praying and a lot of acceptance to myself and releasing the fantasy that he was ever going to change. I had to release it. I had to let it go. So first, stop identifying with what they're telling you, or if you can, take it for what it is and then brush it off. But we got to release the belief that people who are toxic are going to change. Now, I'm not saying it's not possible, because one of the biggest miracles that I have ever had, and some of you know, and I might get emotional, is with him. Is with him to have had his own experience to finally understand me. So do people change? Yes. However, I'm more in transformation than I am into changing, right? So do people transform? Absolutely. It is possible 100%. Now, I had the little rock on my altar for 12 years, but it took that long. It's fine. Some people's have different time frames. Now, I was very blessed that this situation had a turnaround, and me and my brother are super close now, and we can talk about practically everything and anything now. And I'm very blessed, but I had to first release the fantasy that he was ever going to change. Same thing with my mom, same thing with my dad, same thing with my other brothers and sisters, because at some point we are all raised in some kind of toxic behavior, and we have our own toxic behavior because do I know I was toxic in my first marriage? Absolutely, 100%. So I will take my responsibility in that. Now, I released the fantasy. I released this person's never going to change, because it's almost like, you know how hard it is when you guys attempt to make a change, right? You're shedding weight, you're trying to build a habit, you're trying to get up early, and you're really putting in all these efforts. So you guys know, a lot of you who have shed weight or you've been on that journey know how difficult it is, especially if you have an addiction to food, or if you're the way you respond to trauma is by eating. Okay, so there's different coping mechanisms. Now, trying to change someone it's like asking them to change their blood type. It's just not going to happen, you guys. So first, release the fantasy. Release the fantasy that these people are ever going to change. Got it? Second, go ahead and be okay with grieving the loss. Now, in live-in situations, you've released the fantasy, you've surrendered to knowing that they're not going to change. Cool. So now how do you distance yourself, right? What does it mean to distance yourself, especially living in the same household? You become non-reactive, you become non-responsive. And I'm not saying about disrespect when they're speaking to you, you don't speak back. No, you just pass me the salt, here you go. You can become very robotic and disengaged. They will come at you. I promise you that. What the hell's wrong with you? Why are you have stink face on? Whatever. And you're just like, no, it's cool. I'm cool. I'm just peaceful. This is how I like to live. And that's it. And you don't even have to go as far as explaining yourself. That is one of the biggest things that a lot of you have, is that you guys feel like you need to explain yourselves to all these toxic people. Stop it. You don't owe them anything. You don't owe your parents anything. And there's another video on that if you guys want to go down the line. You don't owe them anything. So release the idea that they're going to change. Go ahead and grieve their loss. Go ahead and start being non-reactive, okay? Just non-reactive. Now, I got 2 questions in that you guys messaged me on. So the first one is, why does one become the black sheep, especially when you do so much for your family? Like, why? Well, I can tell you right now that we all are here to feel, and we're all here to 100% feel these human emotions in this vessel. The reason that we become the black sheep is because we are here to shift the family dynamic. We're probably here, probably, I'll remove the probably. We're very likely the ones, the shamans in our family, the ones who are set to heal the family dynamics, the lineage that we're leaving behind, the legacy that we're leaving behind. So we're going to be the ones who carry the brunt of all of that, those jabs, those energetic jabs, or those verbal jabs at that. So we're often the ones who are here to set the record straight and here to clear out those toxic behaviors, or clear or end the cycle. A lot of you have heard the domestic violence cycle, right? So we're here to cut and release those chains, you can say, because they come from generations behind up until they meet the witch or the warlock or the shaman or the master that's going to say, you know what, I'm not going to have any more of that. That's why, because we sign up for it, because nobody else has the same capacity, or maybe previous lives where they were able to do all that. So you picked it. So kudos to you. It isn't easy. It's actually something really hard to be the shaman in your family, because you're the one that asks the hard questions. You're the one that has to make people realize how they're being, like how toxic they're being, without making them feel guilty. Because the other thing is creating your boundaries. I always use this, and I give it to my clients. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being a no, okay, and 10 being a hell yeah. Anything a 6 and above that's a yes, it's a hell yeah. Go ahead and move forward with it. Anything a 5 and below, it's a hell no. Don't do it. Don't agree to it. And give yourself permission to change your mind. Now, it may not be received very well. However, this is where you start to create those boundaries. Part of the reason why we bring in toxic people to our life is because we have an issue with boundaries. It's because we have an issue setting those boundaries straight. We have an issue with saying no and not feeling guilty about it. So use the scale. 1 means no, 10 means yes. Anything 6 and above is a yes, and you're allowed to change your mind. Anything 5 and below is no. And if you have a hard time saying no, you can say, not right now, or let me check my schedule and get back to you. And then later send them a no. But stop explaining yourself. You owe explanations to nobody. It's just like an RSVP at a party. I don't care about the people who aren't showing up. I care about the people who are. So save your excuses, because I don't want to hear them. Unless I ask, I don't want to hear them. So I want you guys to think about that. So grieve the loss. Grieve the loss of that person and replace them. Here's another one of my own experiences. So growing up, luckily, I had my best friend Shwandi and her mom Letty, that I was able to go to her for that motherly advice, for those conversations that I wasn't comfortable with having with my own mother, because of the judgment, because of the Bible thumping, because of the closed mentality. I was able to go to her, and I can really give Letty credit and Shwandi for allowing me to, because they started me on all this metaphysical stuff, even though that's not what we called it back then. It was personal development. So I can say that I really can thank them, because I was able to replace them. I was able to find another mother figure who was able to go ahead and assist me with those things that I wasn't comfortable asking my mom. Okay. Now, how do you do that with the father figure? Same thing. Go to a male who you trust and where you can have those conversations. you replace them. So you grieve the loss and then you replace them. Eventually, I promise you this, that if you do the internal work and you guys do the shadow work, because it's a lot about doing the shadow work, it's about going inward, you will see a shift in the dynamics. Because when you first release that fantasy that they're ever going to change, that's the biggest one. That's the biggest one. It's the one that hurts the most. And then you grieve it. So the other one that I got, so now I hope that answered your question with the black sheep one. Now, how do we figure out the difference between family traits and the ones you've inherited that you can't see in yourself, but others repeatedly point out? Okay, so I'll answer that portion first. I want you to start thinking of things as a mirror. So everybody sees themselves in everybody else. However, if you're accepting it, it belongs to you. And there is a part inside of you that is energetically responding, because if you're reacting to it, it means that it exists in you because you're identifying with it. Okay? I'll use an example. So it's just like when Hispanics react to the word beaner or wetback or I don't know what other names they call us anyway. But when I know that I was born in the States, and yes, I'm Mexican, but I don't consider myself, like, it's a joke. Like, I take it lightly, and I don't have a problem with anybody else identifying with that, because I don't. Therefore, it's not in me, it belongs to them. It's whatever their issue is. Now, if you're identifying with that thing that they keep bringing up, then it's in you, and you got to start working on it. Okay. Now, if there's several people who keep bringing it up and you're in denial, because there is such a thing as being in denial and being victim, okay, and not accepting that you also have a role in the way that people see us. It just is. So you want to make sure that you are definitely looking at that, okay? Let's see. Family traits, inheritance. So here's the thing, is that once you identify with something, you make it yours automatically. So work on it until you can unidentify yourself with it. It's the unlearning. We have to do a lot of unlearning on the shadow work journey, okay? Let's see. And how do you have conversations that you need to have because your personal boundaries are important, but the other party cannot hear the conversation without blowing up? Sometimes we just need to walk away, and that's loving at a distance. That's being able to hold the space that, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and respect your intolerance to me and the way I live my life. And I'm just going to go ahead and just sit here and energetically take it, because you also have a voice. And a lot of the times, because your boundaries have been stumbled over, you forget that you have this. And look, I'm wearing my blue lapis lazuli today. So expression. It's very important that you guys express yourselves. Now, if you've noticed a pattern where you say something and it blows up and you're just tired of that blow up, you can go ahead and just opt not to continue to react, because what's happening is that all that you're reacting to whatever they're saying. Okay. So remember, when you become reactive, you're taking part of that. You're engaging in that communication. Okay. Let me see what else. Without blowing up, even when you let it go, even though everyone says you shouldn't. Well, you decide. At the end of the day, you decide how you want to live in that situation, especially if it's a live-in situation. You guys decide. I'm just going to be silent. I'm just not going to. Here's the salt, over your shoulder. So I hope that answered your question. Let me see if anybody else, because I do have. Okay. I think that was it on the questions. Anybody who's still watching, do you guys have any questions? So grieve the loss, replace them, accept that they're not going to change, release that. Just release that fantasy, because it's a fantasy, guys. It's a fantasy. And then replace them. And if you've done all of this, okay, and you still have a really hard time getting to the point of acceptance, message me for a therapy session. As you guys do know, I do tarot, but it's a therapy session. I see what energetic patterns you guys are running with, and then I point you out on your bullshit. Oops, excuse me. I had done so well. I'm not cursing. Anyway, any questions? Let me know. I'm looking at the live chat here. Anybody else have anything else? Anybody? So just remember, we've all been toxic at some point. So we also have to remember that there's a reason why we're being toxic. There's some kind of unfulfillment going on within us where we need to lash out on other people. There's some kind of unfulfillment or sorrow or sadness that we have yet to grieve and have yet to go through. So also come from that perspective and knowing that everyone is a mirror to us. And as long as we don't accept it and get defensive, it means that it doesn't belong to us and it belongs to them. All right. So I hope that this has helped you guys. I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. If you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to reach out to me. But loving at a distance, it's allowed. You guys can separate yourselves. You guys can choose not to go to an event. You guys can change your mind. You guys can choose to stop participating in the family that you were born into because you have that option. The family dynamics have changed to where you are allowed to create your own families outside of the one you were given. But it is very likely that you are the shaman and you got to start doing that internal work. And part of our internal work and part of our work as shamans or the black sheep is to rattle the cage a little. So I'm leaving you guys with that. Let me know what you guys thought, and I will see you guys soon. Take care. Bye.